What's going on, FA Nation? It's time for another edition of Waiver Wire Tuesday here at Fantasy Alarm. We're helping you dominate your fantasy football leagues. And oh my goodness, it's time for the fantasy football playoffs. For most of you, this is the last week that you can make these waiver claims. I know in my high stakes league, Saturday is the absolute last time I can make a waiver claim. So this is a really important week. I know, crazy, right? It's a little scary.
No waivers at playoffs is brutal.
No waivers. You can blame Adam Ronis for this.
Nickname. Is it his rules? He's the one that set the standard?
It's his rules. It's his league. He's the commish. So, yeah, if you guys want to play in a league with Adam Ronis, know what you're getting into, because I didn't realize that, and I'm feeling real nervous. Luckily, I have Jon Impemba with me here today, so I can stop feeling nervous because he's going to help me make all the correct waiver wire claims. I feel confident. Jon, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Yeah, I mean, listen, this is it, right? Like you said, we're a week away from the fantasy playoffs for most. Scott Fish playoffs start this week, week 13. I know you were doing really well. My team, not so much, eliminated very early on in the Scott Fish Bowl. So,
it's been a good week for me this week, I have to say. Yeah, really, Kyler and Justin let me down.
Yeah. I mean, listen, my whole season let me down. I drafted McCaffrey, Mostert as my top two running backs, and they basically have combined for like 3 games this season. So not good there. But listen, like you said, we have a lot of waiver guys to look at this week. Week 13. The biggest news I think that's going to impact a lot of rosters is the Will Fuller suspension, right? So wide receiver is going to be a pretty big position hit this week.
Yeah, and in a league that I'm in first place in, I lost Will Fuller, and I'm freaking out. And it's a 14-team league, Jon, and I went, and there's nothing on the wire. Luckily, I sort of like my bench, but I don't love my bench. I don't know if I can win without Will Fuller, so we're going to have to make some magic. I'm going to enlist all your help to figure out how we can do that. I'm hopeful that Cam Akers coming on is going to help because he's been sitting on my bench all year, so maybe he can help me out in the flex. Right. But let's start at the top. Let's just start with quarterback, and we'll go down position by position. We're definitely going to hit that Will Fuller news. Okay, so first off, on the waiver wire, a lot of you probably have Ryan Fitzpatrick. I like Ryan Fitzpatrick this week as a pickup. He's facing he's facing Cincinnati. Yeah. Last week he threw for 257 yards, 2 touchdowns versus the Jets. Cincinnati has allowed an average of 259 passing yards per game. So I have a feeling you can get similar production from Fitz this week if you're without Tom Brady or if you're without, I guess, Teddy Bridgewater.
You can definitely get similar production if you're without Teddy Bridgewater, exactly. That's for sure.
Exactly.
Listen, Cincinnati's defense ranked 26 in DVOA against the pass. So, things are coming on. We know that Fitz is definitely a gunslinger. Connected with Devontae Parker a lot last week. He got a touchdown. Not that he was overly involved in that offense, but this is a good spot for him this week. And they're at home as well. The next stretch of games coming up for them is pretty solid. So, I don't mind adding Fitz right now. And, they have Kansas City after Cincinnati. That's going to at least be a game where they're going to have to throw, whether good or bad. So, there's a lot of good production potential for Fitzpatrick in the coming weeks.
And we do think Tua is going to miss a few weeks due to injury, correct? That's less the word.
Yeah, I think not only is he going to miss a few weeks, I think Flores maybe now just be committed to making the playoffs. I mean, they're already sort of in that hunt as it is anyways with their record. But, I think he saw that Tua wasn't really ready yet. I mean, they won this couple of the games that he had started, but he didn't do anything wildly, to really impact those performances. The defense came on strong. Mm-hmm. He really managed the game. But as he said in that game against Denver, which they lost, he pulled Tua because he felt like they had a chance to win, and Fitzpatrick was that best chance for them. So I think he's realizing now that he has an opportunity to make the playoffs. And of course, they're holding all the cards there. They have Houston's first and second round picks, so they don't have to worry about hurting their draft chances. They're going to get a top 5 pick likely out of them. So, listen, I think it's a good spot for Fitz moving forward.
I feel like Houston's going to be a theme of this live stream. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and target them now as far as quarterbacks. If Phillip Rivers is still on the wire, I think he's someone that could be viable this week as well. 292 yards with 2 touchdown passes last week. Even in the loss to the Titans before that, he had a monster game. This week they faced Houston. Houston has allowed the 10th most passing yards per game, and they're just kind of in a sad spot right now, which we'll go into more later.
Yeah, two of the next 3 games actually against Houston. So they go Houston, Raiders, Houston. So
and I believe
great
they
spots
own
for them.
Houston historically, don't they?
Yeah, they do pretty well. And Houston this year, 22nd in DVOA against the pass. So again, not I mean, we just saw Cam Newton throw for like 360 yards in them, and we know how bad Newton's been throwing the football. So I think there's a lot of upside again with Rivers, who's coming on strong lately too.
And I gotta ask you, how do you feel about Kirk Cousins? Is he someone we should be rostering now? He's had like 3 great games in a row. Do you trust it?
Yeah. So it's tough because I know how run heavy that offense is. Right. But one of the more interesting stats that I saw today, that when it comes to red zone performances, Kirk Cousins is like top 3 quarterback in the NFL in like completion percentages. I think he has 14 touchdowns, like no interceptions in the red zone. Like he's been incredibly efficient there. And then he has Jacksonville this upcoming week. So I think if you need a 1 week start, perfectly okay going with Cousins here, at Tampa Bay and then Chicago the next 2 weeks. Tougher spots for him, theoretically. So if you're in a spot start need, I think Cousins is perfectly fine as an ad this week.
If you were picking from these three quarterbacks, who would you pick to be your backup quarterback that you carry through the playoffs should an injury occur to your main quarterback?
Yeah, I think I'm going Rivers just with that schedule that's coming up. Knowing that they get Houston twice, to me is just a really huge sort of advantage. I'm going to pull it up right now because I want to see what they're actually playing in Week 16 if you get there. So Week 16, you may need to hope on your starting quarterback because they're at Pittsburgh. So if you're in a championship week, maybe you'll be looking at a different quarterback, but you got to get to the championship before you worry about the championship. And Rivers can certainly have the schedule to lead you there.
I like what you said there. I think that's something we all need to bear in mind. You have to get to the championship before you worry about the championship. So as we're going through this, guys, go ahead and think about it more 1 week at a time. Get yourself to the next level. Don't outthink yourself. Already getting a lot of questions about Week 16 when I feel like we need to be worrying more about Week
15 at the very least, like maybe you're a first round bye already. Well, worry about Week 15, get to the championship first.
That's right. Okay. So I like it. I like it a lot. Let's go ahead and hit wide receiver. So big news, total bummer. Will Fuller out for the rest of the season. I am heartbroken. So let's review what's happened to the Houston Texans this week. Okay. So early in the week, they released Kenny Stills. Okay, fine. Plenty of depth,
Yeah, whoops. Yeah.
No big deal. Then Randall Cobb goes on the IR. All right, getting a little tight here, but you still got a clear number 2 in Cooks. You got Willer number 1, Fuller number 1. You got Kiki Kuti, fine. And then Will Fuller, your number 1, is suspended for the rest of the season. So obviously, Brandon Cooks owners are very, very excited. Okay. I think Kiki Kuti will probably be the number 1 claim this week if he's not already rostered.
Especially if you own Fuller, I imagine that he is probably going to be one of the highest owned. I mean, nobody owned him before. He's less than 1% owned. So, and we've seen him at times, in the past few years, be put into sort of the number 2 receiver role because Fuller's been injured. And they had Hopkins opposite of him. And he's performed at times in that, but then he also was fairly injury prone. So, he was never really given the full opportunity. So, he kind of touched on a couple of weeks ago. They're going to have to lean on him here this going forward for sure as that number 2 option. He's an easy ad because he's out there.
Yeah, except he's not in all the leagues I tried to add him because those are the leagues I play in. Stinks. And it's
formats 14, 16 there. He's probably at.
Stinks. So we're going to dig really deep this week. In fact, I was just looking up, John. I was surprised to see only 1.1% rostered in ESPN leagues. Gabriel Davis, a must add now. John Brown is officially on the IR, and that's been confusing all season because it's been like John Brown's just out. John Brown's kind of practicing. Oh, his hamstring's bothering him. He's playing 99% of the snaps, but doing nothing, still getting you a 0. Then he has one great game, and the next thing you know, he's injured again. Look, John Brown is not well this season. He needs to take the time off. It is Gabriel Davis season now. Gabriel Davis just flat out takes his snaps, and he's productive.
All of them. Takes all of them. He played 97% of the snaps last week. The other 2 games in which Brown had missed time, Davis played 95 and 100% of the snaps. So he's on the field. Now, he's definitely a big boomer bust player, right? Like, he's a downfield guy. Sometimes those targets are hit or miss. He can have 1 catch on 4 targets for 20 yards, and then that's all he does for you. But we've also seen some pretty big games out of him this year. Obviously, had the touchdown and 74 yards last week. I would look at him. I would see if Cole Beasley, for whatever reason, would still be available in your leagues. Again, I know he likely more added than obviously Davis at the 1%, but if you're in a 10-team league or something like that, or maybe a less active 12-team league, maybe Cole Beasley's still there. Certainly float him. The Bills are a team that do have a tough schedule, though. If you look at the upcoming games, they're at San Francisco, home against Pittsburgh the next 2 weeks. A little bit easier in terms of opponent, at Denver in week 15, at New England week 16, but they're on the road for those games. So Buffalo certainly has their hands full, but maybe games where, that offense, they're going to have to throw the football, and Davis and his big play upside with Josh Allen there, who likes to take those shots downfield, can come through for you.
I want to talk about a receiver that we talked about last week, who we touted pretty highly and basically seemed like he did nothing this week. However, he did have 9 targets, and that is Michael Pittman. It seems to me that if we're going to buy into Phillip Rivers, that we probably should also go ahead and buy into Michael Pittman. And though he was a very high waiver claim last week, you may already see fantasy managers dropping him out of frustration because they're just scrounging together. I believe if Michael Pittman is available, he's still a must-add. What are your thoughts, John?
Yeah, no, for sure. Listen, I always preach that target creates opportunity. So if he got targeted 9 times, that means those are 9 chances he had to catch a football and do something with them. Now, he didn't, but he had the entire weeks before. And we already talked about the schedule that they have coming up. Houston twice, terrible pass defense, and then the Raiders. So, I'm game on adding Michael Pittman. And you know what? I would also venture, if you're in a league where he's been cut already, just retake a look at T.Y. Hilton. Finally found the end zone last week.
Right.
Consistently, the targets have been there for Hilton. That hasn't been the problem, but he's just struggled for one reason or another connecting with Phillip Rivers this season. So, but again, the current matchups that they're coming up against, are conducive to success in the passing game, and maybe Hilton, finally getting that rhythm this week with defenses, maybe paying more attention to Pittman, and he gets a softer coverage. So take a look and see if Hilton's been dropped in any of your leagues as well.
Speaking of Las Vegas, what do you think? I mean, I think we've talked about Nelson Aguilar to death. I don't think we have to talk about him anymore. He's clearly dependable this year, crazy as it may seem, assuming, Derek Carr isn't throwing pick sixes and able to stand upright and play the game. Aguilar, by the way, I saw Derek Carr had a baby yesterday, and I'm sort of wondering if what was going on Sunday was his mind just wasn't in the game. It was more, and that makes some sense to me. And I kind of hope that's it, because he was sort of having a career year. Maybe I'm still angry because I started him in a lot of FanDuel lineups with Waller, but
you weren't alone. A lot of people were in on Derek Carr this week, so ownership was fairly high there. Listen, you're not wrong. Something at some point switched in the offense, and I don't know if it was some of the games where they just got big enough leads where they really focused on running the football. I think it's now been 4 of the last 5 games where he's thrown for 215 yards or less. I think 3 of the games he didn't even throw for 200 yards. The one game where he threw over the 215 was when he was in that shootout against Kansas City. So it's like, all right, is this the offense now? If they have to throw the football, they will, or otherwise they're going to run the football. But now we have the injury situation going on with Josh Jacobs,
right?
Where if Jacobs isn't able to go or isn't 100% or is limited, they may force the offense to change again and look at Derek Carr. So, Aguilar is fine, but, I know Dan was in his hot takes piece, he put a blurb in there about Henry Ruggs, and I know he's talking about him in the waiver wire article this week about Ruggs potentially being a guy.
That's what I wanted to ask you about. How do you feel about Ruggs? Because, they win. They took him look, he was drafted ahead of CeeDee Lamb. He was drafted ahead of Jerry Jeudy. He was drafted ahead of Michael Pittman and Justin Jefferson.
He's the number 1 rookie receiver drafted, though. People questioned that, but, the Raiders doing Raiders things and just taking the fastest man available, and listen, I bought into the hype here. Maybe I should have been a warning sign when he hurt himself moving his friend's furniture in the offseason, but I thought he was coming in to be the number 1 receiver. We saw Tyrell Williams last year have success in this offense. I'm like, Ruggs is going to be that guy, come out of the slot, and Carr's going to hit him, and it's going to be a great season. I drafted him in a lot of leagues. He wasn't really expensive in terms of draft capital this year, so I thought I was getting a great value for him. But then he got hurt, and, he never really was able to get in sync with Derek Carr. And maybe it's because Carr isn't really a downfield thrower, so it's not really his play style to connect with Ruggs. But then why did you draft Ruggs? Shouldn't you have thought that over who your quarterback was the first before you took him? So maybe there's some potential here. And again, 3 for 56 on 5 targets is like, okay, it's not really much to get excited for, but they do have the Jets this week. So, good upside potential there.
Another waiver wire ad. And again, sometimes I'm just surprised that these guys are still on the wire, but Corey Davis is somehow still available in quite a few leagues. Corey Davis has had double-digit fantasy points in PPR in all but one game this year. Something we thought we would never say is get Corey Davis if you want a wide receiver with a really solid floor. But again, this week, 70 yards, plenty of targets. He's used in the offense, and Tannehill throws. And I know the fear here is that they use the run game so much, but he still remains valid, it seems. And it is Derrick Henry season. I do understand.
It's definitely Derrick Henry season. The calendar has flipped.
It has.
And now he is just the unstoppable machine that we've seen in November, December, January, the last handful of seasons. It almost seems like, in spite of Howard Bender, Corey Davis is on pace for a career year. Bender always considers Davis to suck. But he's on pace for 75 catches, 1,100 yards, and 5 scores. And, I, too, struggle with sort of the same thing that I feel like everybody does. They see Corey Davis, and they're like, I've been burned too many times by this man to trust him. But the production continues to be there. And then we're talking about schedules, Cleveland, Jacksonville, Detroit, all coming up here. Is Denzel Ward going to be back? And if Denzel Ward's on, he's going to be on A.J. Brown anyway. So, he's getting the softer coverage in those matchups. They're all solid matchups for him to be successful. And again, you saw him get 70 yards last week in a game where Derrick Henry ran for 116, 3 scores or something like that. So even when Henry's, being a monster, he's still finding a way to be productive. So I like the ad if he's still available. The schedule is favorable.
Now let's get really gross and deep here. We made some deep ads last week based on all this COVID stuff and postponements. What about someone like Andy Isabella? Is this someone we should consider going out and getting?
No, I like Isabella as long as obviously Fitzgerald's still out. He plays, the majority of the slot snaps. And I said, last week he saw 55% of the snaps on the offense. So, is he on the field for as much as Larry Fitzgerald is when Fitzgerald is healthy? No, because he's not Larry Fitzgerald. They have Keyshawn Johnson. They'll do some different formations, flipping in Kirk in the slot. But primarily, Andy Isabella is going to be that slot receiver when Fitzgerald's out. 6 targets was great to see. Only 4 catches for 33 yards. So it wasn't really the big play I was expecting. He's a very fast guy. He ran, I think it was a hand time, 4.2740. I think at the combine it was 4.31. So he's a burner. But is Kyler Murray's shoulder okay? Is he going to be able to throw downfield to a guy like Isabella? We saw them run the football a lot with Kenyon Drake. So I don't mind Isabella if Fitz is still out. I think he's going to be on the field at the very least. They have the potential to be involved. And maybe, the short passes that he was getting, is the way that Kyler's going to have to throw the football right now. So I don't mind it as a speculative ad, but know that once Larry Fitzgerald does come back, Isabella's snap count's going to drop back down to 20%, and there's just no value there.
I'm going to give you a few super deep ads, and I want to know which one you would prefer if you had these choices.
Sure.
Demarcus Robinson, N'Keal Harry, or Jalen Guyton?
So, I love getting the exposure, obviously, to the Chiefs' offense there. My problem with Robinson is largely that Sammy Watkins came back, and I know that Robinson is still sort of involved in that, in their offensive game plan, right? But with Sammy Watkins back, they sort of play the same position, so he doesn't necessarily get the same snap counts that he was seeing. He was over 80%, almost 90% in games where Watkins was out. Now, last week, sure, 5 catches, 36 yards, still saw 70% of the snaps, so not awful, but, I feel like the upside that he was bringing to the table, in weeks prior when Watkins was out, kind of goes away. I can't really trust N'Keal Harry. I don't believe in Cam Newton throwing the football. And then Guyton's sort of the same way. He's very hit or miss. So
hit or miss. I
think Robinson is probably the safest of the group just because I believe in the quarterback there.
Yeah, I think that's probably the case too. I just wanted to give you a really gross situation because that's where a few of us are now.
Yeah,
In the deep leagues.
honestly, you talked about COVID. If Adam Thielen isn't back, we saw Olabisi Johnson and Chad Beebe both come through and be productive. And we already talked about the matchup that they have coming up for a spot start this week. If Thielen is out again, yeah, maybe you take a look at one of those two and you just hope they can recoup the magic. I hate chasing points on those type of players because their floor is literally a 0. So it really has to be a deep league, and you got to be hurting, I think. If you're ranking your waiver wire priority, you got claims on guys, BB and Olabisi Johnson are probably my bottom two, and hope that it doesn't get to that point.
Where would you put Josh Reynolds in that list?
I mean, listen, Reynolds for a period of time was like almost carrying that Rams offense. It's just the inconsistent play, seemingly of Jared Goff that has made it difficult to guess which receiver is going to be productive on one night. Now, I love the fact that he's on the field over 90% of the time, played 98% of the snaps against the 49ers. They got Arizona coming up. That pass secondary, pass defense really isn't that great. But he's theoretically third in line in targets, right? Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods are ahead of him. So there's certainly a chance where he's not going to have huge games, but another one that gets targeted, and I love a guy that's at least on the field.
All right, let's talk running backs because we always need running backs. I got to stick here with the Rams and ask you, is it finally Cam Akers' time? He finally led the backfield this week. Has Sean McVay flipped his page to the Cam Akers part of the playbook?
I mean, I don't know. He still only played 27% of the snaps, right? So, it's not as if he had this, overwhelming share of the backfield. I'm trying to pull up the snap counts here for Henderson and Brown. Bear me with you for a second. So, Henderson played 32%. Brown played 40%. So, he still trailed the other two in snaps. What he had, though, was a 60-yard run, and then they let him cap it off with the touchdown. So, listen, we've seen him now in the week prior catch a touchdown. He ran for a touchdown this week. He's flashing all of the upside and the big playability and the skill set that we thought was going to make him the lead running back this year.
Right.
I at least like that he's on the field, right? Because he's now seen 4 straight games where he's gotten about 20 to 25% on average snap share. Before that, he was 4%, 2%, 19, 4%. So, he wasn't on the field. So you couldn't even trust that he was going to get touches. At least now, you look at his carries the last 4 games, 9, 10, 5, 9.
Right.
Okay, give me a guy that's going to get 10 carries, and I can maybe believe that he can break a big play like we saw from him. So if you're in a desperate situation, the matchups, again, coming up are solid for him. Arizona, New England, and the Jets. So if there's a time for him to break out, potentially, this is the schedule that's going to do it for him.
Well, he's on my bench in one of my leagues, so I'm keeping him there. I'm not dropping him, I'll tell you that. It's time to hold. All right. Kamara owners are probably a little upset after the second week.
I'm upset. I'm upset very too. Upset. Yeah.
I'm ready for the Taysom Hill experiment to be over. It's not cute anymore. It was kind of cute when I got to use him as a tight end in a FanDuel lineup. Other than that, I don't really need to watch the Taysom Hill show.
Not when he turned the number 1 running back in half-point PPR into a maybe flex play in 2 weeks of time. So.
Freaking ridiculous. And I don't have one single share of Kamara, but I'm incensed for all of you that do because he's one of the most talented players.
I thought I avoided the landmine of the first round. Look at all of the first round picks this year, and basically outside of Dalvin Cook and Alvin Kamara, everything was just a total disaster. Between Barkley and McCaffrey and Elliott, you can go Michael Thomas, you go Drake, up and down the list. Drake, they're all been. But those guys at least were fine, and Cook has continued to be an absolute truck, but. Kamara all of a sudden now, again, getting Elliott syndrome where the quarterback change has just destroyed all of his value. And it's people are like, well, you can't just bench Alvin Kamara. I'm like, I know, but he's hurting my team given sort of the expectation, right?
Style. Yeah, Taysom Hill doesn't throw the ball. And what makes Kamara so valuable is the fact that he essentially operates as a receiver as well as a runner. And so then my question to you is Latavius Murray now the back to own as long as Taysom Hill is under center?
I think Murray is for sure in the flex play conversation. Now, Murray was getting volume really anyways this season because they didn't wear Kamara down in the running game like you mentioned. He was on pace to set NFL records as a receiver for a running back, which is kind of unfair because at that point he's just a receiver. If he's going to get 120 catches and 130 targets and all the stuff that he was on pace for. But now knowing that the style of offense has shifted and you've seen Latavius Murray with almost a 50% snap share over the last 2 weeks, I think Murray, if he's available, you definitely have to go ahead and put him in your lineup because the touches are going to be there. They get a matchup against Atlanta, who I know per DVOA, the upcoming schedule against the run for the Saints is pretty tough. Atlanta, Philadelphia, and then they have Kansas City. But we saw Taysom Hill run for 2 touchdowns against Atlanta. Kamara did find the end zone against Atlanta 2 weeks ago, but only 3.4 yards per carry. So, it's going to be really tough to trust these running backs. I think eventually teams are just going to sell out knowing that Taysom Hill's not throwing the football. It's going to be tough go for this backfield, and it kills me. Again, the fantasy playoffs are in 2 weeks. I have Alvin Kamara on a team, and what am I doing? I almost can't trust them now, and it's scary.
I'm sorry. I really am. It sucks. Okay, one more running back, and then we'll hit tight end, and then it's already at the half hour. I can't believe
time flies when you're having fun, Jen.
It's true. Okay, Josh Jacobs. We saw him sprain his ankle, and I actually saw it, and then I saw him kind of grab his ankle, and I thought, I don't want to see this so close to the playoffs. I don't want to see it at all. Devontae Booker, though, I feel like this is someone we have to put in the conversation. If Jacobs doesn't play this week, obviously he's a must. But even if he does, I'm wondering if he's someone we should start to stash, as he's clearly the handcuff to Josh Jacobs. Over a 2-week span of week 9 and 10, Booker had 3 touchdowns and 149 yards. He can be effective. And as you said, that offense, maybe not much of a throwing offense unless they have to be in a shootout. They kind of like to run the ball. If they're sticking with that, it seems to me Booker is a good add, whether you're the Josh Jacobs owner or not, if you have deep enough room on your bench.
Yeah, it's interesting because he's definitely more of a pass catcher, and that's his role than he has been a runner. And that's sort of the role he transitioned to basically after being drafted by Denver, and they realized that he wasn't meant to be an every down runner. But I think because he has that pass catching value to him, I would look at him almost more like we look at Duke Johnson now in the role that Duke Johnson's playing, where I don't have much expectations for him as a runner because most of his running success has come against those defenses that are expecting him not to run the football. He's out there usually to catch the football or pass block and not be a guy that's getting the carries. So, I would sort of temper my expectations on him running the football, but I think him being on the field for 50-60% of the snaps will mean that he's going to get more in the passing game. So if you're in a PPR or half PPR league, I think Booker is definitely going to have some value there should Jacobs miss time. But we've also already talked about the upcoming schedule there. They have the Jets this week. It's a good matchup for the running back. So I don't mind the 1 week out of Booker. I don't mind him in PPR leagues as sort of a fail safe to Jacobs, because like you said, they don't have much behind him. Jalen Richard potentially could grab some work there, but again, not a guy that's really a runner. So it'll be interesting to see what they do should Jacobs miss time.
And hopefully Jacobs is fine, but that is definitely something you need to keep an eye on. Okay, we're going to head over to the tight end position. And to me, we've already talked about Jordan Reed. This is all boring. All tight ends are boring. But where it gets interesting is we're going back again to Houston. So we're now talking about a team that has almost no wide receivers. You have Brandon Cooks and Kiki Kuti, as you've said, a major injury risk. That, to me, opens up opportunity for both Jordan Akins and Darren Fells. I would prioritize Jordan Akins. He's a little bit more of the pass catcher. However, when Akins was out, Darren Fells also incredibly effective. 2 touchdowns, 142 yards over the course of weeks 5 and 6. He has the big 6'7" wingspan. I think both of these are now in the conversation, not because they're such great tight ends, but because I think that especially Akins could end up being wide receiver number 3 for Deshaun Watson, a very high-powered passing offense.
I mean, I agree with you. It's very possible that they look and turn to the tight end position there as sort of the next man up in their receiving group. I think it's certainly possible, that Akins steps into that platform. Now, again, he's been very inconsistent at times this season, so it's certainly been a struggle to, really trust him. But we're seeing a new opportunity for him now to step into this offense. Typically he's only played around 50% of the snaps. Is he going to see more snaps now? They're going to line him up maybe in the slot a little bit more. So I think for a speculative ad, I think he works. Fells in the red zone, we know is certainly a possibility there. If you're in like a super, super deep league, and those guys maybe aren't even available, you could take a look at Kylie Warren. It's a tight end they drafted in the 3rd round last year. He was on IR. He's a pass-catching tight end. Obviously, he hasn't been able to crack the rotation because of the 2 guys that are in front of him, but they did recently activate him off of IR, and he played 7% of the snaps last week. So it was his first game he was on the field. So if you're looking super duper deep, it's a tight end position. They're in desperate need of receiving help. Kylie Warren could be somebody that they take a look at. Again, 3rd round pick last year. It's not a nothing investment in the guy. So 6'5", 250-pound tight end maybe makes a debut here as the season winds down.
Oh, I said that was the last one, but let me quickly ask you this. Chicago's schedule, actually really good from here.
It was one of my favorite schedules, Jen. I was trying to acquire Bears players, and then Foles got hurt, and I was like, right. I don't really know. But Trubisky is better than Tyler Bass, I think, or not Bass, whoever it was. It was the backup quarterback there behind them. So I'm kind of back on the Bears train here.
Yeah, that was my question. So would you have any interest in Jimmy Graham or even Cole Kmet going forward?
I'm fine with Graham. Again, I've been out on Graham, most of the season as sort of just a middling tight end. I think he's sort of around the top 12 in fantasy production. The end zone targets were there earlier in the year. Occasionally the yardage has been there. The targets have been nice. I'll buy in on some Jimmy Graham. Detroit, Houston, Minnesota is his schedule coming up. So, it's not bad. It's not bad. I would take a look at someone we talked a lot about last week in DFS. But if Irv Smith is out again, Kyle Rudolph. Rudolph played 78% of the snaps, had 8 targets last week, 68 yards on 7 catches. If Thielen's out, if Irv Smith is out, they look at Rudolph. Rudolph is a guy that was once a pretty solid pass-catching option in that offense. So you can take a peek there as well. Jacksonville, again, on the schedule this week.
Tyler Eifert, any interest?
Listen, kudos to you. You called him out as a play on the Alarm After Hours show on Friday. When I talked about Rudolph, sort of the same thing, right? Like if they're going to be without their top targets, Eifert's a guy that I think you can at least take a look at. He had 4 targets, 16 yards, and a touchdown. Does that jump off the page? No, but Minnesota and Tennessee on the upcoming schedule, not great pass defenses. It's possible that he continues to get looks in the red zone.
Yeah, I mean, tight end is tight end. The most exciting one to me is probably Jordan Akins, but again,
it's a crapshoot. It really is. I believe in Akins probably more in terms of overall upside, just because that passing offense has a lot of targets to replace.
Right. I think they average like 330 passing yards. I don't know. It's a ridiculous amount of passing yards per game. It's really, really high. So anyway, all right, that will be it for our waiver wire. We went a little overtime. But you guys, if you have any more waiver wire questions, there is an article on fantasyalarm.com by Dan Malin with all the waiver wire picks you need for the week. Obviously, you can rewind this. You can talk to us in the chat. We're there 24/7. You guys, I guess we will see you next Tuesday. Enjoy your Wednesday night football. And Wednesday afternoon.
You're on the West Coast, aren't you? It's
Wednesday morning. Something. Yeah, it's like 12:45 or whatever.
Yeah.
So enjoy your afternoon football, and we'll catch you next time.